from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We are live, we're national, we're looking forward to your calls. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, if you are so inclined to join our late night national town hall conversation. I'm hoping that you do. And plenty to discuss tonight, like there is every night. I love having this national conversation with you guys. El Trompito pulling up in California today, meeting with Gavin, as he calls him, Gavin Newsom. And I thought he was very gracious, very kind to the guy. They were both kind to each other, despite all of the rhetoric back and forth. And it's funny, right? I'm from Jersey, and everybody always talks about when Chris Christie embraced Obama, when he needed help, kind of like Governor Gavin Newsom right now, being very kind towards Trump. And look, I don't expect them to hate each other. But again, given the heated rhetoric, one would suspect that there would be just a firm handshake, respect for the office. But it seemed like they kind of got along. I mean, there were some contentious moments, depending on the pictures that you look at. But I remember Governor Christie giving an embrace to Obama, and that was it. Everybody said, oh, we hate him, oh, this and that. And I thought it was a unfair rap that they gave him, because he was trying to save New Jersey that was underwater from Hurricane Sandy. But anyway, my point is, that's how politics works. Everybody hates each other until they're face-to-face. And then they're like, you're not so bad. You're just a clown, right? It's always, let's lock these people up until you realize that, this isn't as bad as we thought it was, and we're never going to get the conviction. So you don't go for it. I've been going at it. I rarely take the bait from the trolls, but earlier today I took some bait, or last night I took some of the bait from some trolls on Twitter. And against my own advice, because the advice I was given early on was, don't feed the trolls because they'll come back for more. But every now and again, the people that believe in this thing called the Brunson case, every now and again, the people that believe that at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Camp Gitmo, that somehow every last Democrat and every last person that's ever been evil in life is going to be executed, and how that's somehow an American thing to do. I can't ever get down with this idea. I just can't do it. No due process, no trial, not even a court of law. A military tribunal is what my friends with bigger tinfoil hats than I like to talk about. Might I remind you that there was a guy who ran for president saying, lock her up, lock her up. His name, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. And what did El Trompito do? Well, he became president. And what did he do with Hillary Clinton? He just kept making fun of her. Ultimately, in this current campaign, he said he decided that it was wrong, it wasn't the right thing to do, to jail a former First Lady of the United States. I didn't make it up. DJT said that, the president, the 45th and 47th. And for those out in conspiracy land that thinks he's also the 46th, I believe that was a stolen election. But be that as it may, ultimately, Trump did not put anybody in jail. Matter of fact, the other day, he laid out a 9-point plan. I played all of it. It took me 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes to play all of the audio of him laying out this plan. And he said, I think he got all the way up to point number 7 or 8, when he said, and when necessary, we'll use the law and we'll put him in jail, or something to that effect, right? Putting people in jail is not the only way to hold people accountable. And not that I'm trying to defend the deep state or anything like that. Why am I talking about this now? I don't know. Maybe because I just get tired of people telling me that I need to wake up because I'm not with the program. Listen, just because I want him in jail as much as everybody else. But when Fauci's gotten a pardon, just because you say this pardon's illegal doesn't mean that it is. This is a whole complicated legal process we have to go to, last I checked. So I just say that to say, look, we got to call a spade a spade. If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it's a duck. We can't say, look, it's a goose because we feel like it, because emotionally we do. No. Our good friend Ben Shapiro famously said, right, the facts don't care about your feelings. And I think that's true. So I'll leave that there. Now, some of the other stuff that's going on, besides Trump visiting Gavin Newsom and being very kind to him in California, you've got Trump announcing that the FEMA overhaul is going to take place during his visit to North Carolina. You got the Senate voting right now, this evening, to confirm Pete Hegseth. You've got some illegal aliens that are voluntarily deporting themselves. And listen, that is the best thing that could happen, right? Because if, in fact, they are deporting themselves, then it would be a good thing. It would be a very, very good thing if they deported themselves. It would help everybody, right? It would help them. It would help us. I don't know if everybody's going to do it. But we've got the governor. If we have the governor in Massachusetts, who's a lefty, saying that she supports Trump deporting criminal illegal aliens in her state. And that's the audio we heard yesterday of the ICE team in Boston grabbing all these people. She says, hey, we're going to cooperate with ICE. When you got the lefties in Boston on board, that's when you know things are out of control. And it wasn't not that long ago, less than a week ago, Jorge Ventura reported that we were, in fact, seeing people that were voluntarily deporting themselves. Check this out.
Some migrants are already choosing to leave the country voluntarily. News Nation's Jorge Ventura joins us live from San Antonio, Texas this morning with more on this story. Jorge, how many migrants are we actually seeing doing this, leaving voluntarily?
Right now, Marky, it's unclear, but we are starting to see a trend, and this comes as cities across the U.S. and Mexico are now bracing for President-elect's deportation operation. But his hardline messaging on those deportation efforts have some migrants panicking and some even choosing now to self-deport back to their home countries. I spoke with immigration attorney Rolando Vasquez, who tells me that some of the immigrants that he represents that entered under the Biden administration are now choosing to return home, fearing deportation under the incoming administration.
Just as recent as yesterday, they notified me that they were going to depart the country voluntarily, and understanding that, you know, the Trump administration is going to carry through on their promises.
And it's not just Trump's deportation plans that are influenced these decisions. Vasquez says it's also that Mexico is now open to accepting non-Mexican deportees. Mexico's move would impact Cuban and Venezuelan migrants the most, since those countries typically do not accept deportation flights from the U.S., but may from Mexico.
This is causing for many migrants to leave on their own, knowing that they're either going to be deported to their home country or be deported to Mexico. And they obviously, the overwhelming majority of them do not want to be in Mexico.
And my sources in Mexico tell me that it's likely that cartels and smugglers will exploit, kidnap, and extort those newly deported migrants. As of right now, it's unclear if Mexico has a plan to protect those deported migrants, Marky.
Yeah, border's about to change on Monday. At least that's what voters were promised.
So there you have that, right? We know that people are self-deporting. This is a good thing, right? It's the best thing for us. In reality, we've reached a point, I would say, of diminishing returns here, where you've got way more supply than you do demand. Doesn't work. Economically, it doesn't work. So we need to, I don't know, to be, I don't know if it's crass or just practical, but thin the herd, right? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. We have to go back to a system of law and order. I think Trump has promised that. He's delivered on that. He's going to continue to deliver on that. Yesterday, he declassified the JFK documents. I believe around March, they should be made available to the public. But I want to get some speculation on what do you think? What do you think is going to be in those documents? Do you think they're going to say that the official government account is the right one? I don't think so, but I don't know what to expect. So I want to have some conversation on that. Also want to have some conversation on everything else that's going on, right? We've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. I want to talk about these security clearances, right? Bolton, former Ambassador Bolton, Dr. Fauci, Mike Pompeo, even one White House aide, a guy named Brian Hook. Never even heard of this guy. All these guys have lost their security clearances. So I want to talk about them losing their security clearances. I want to talk about the impact overall on national security and so much more. And I also want to talk about something really interesting. And if you miss it, always check out the podcast at richvaldez.com because I think all of these conversations are important. Whether you're able to listen to them all live or not, I think you should listen. And I want to talk about something called the queen bee syndrome. And oftentimes guys are often labeled narcissists for this, that reason, or that reason, right? They label Trump a narcissist all the time. People say that people in my line of work are very narcissistic, and that may in fact be true. I'm not here to refute that, but I do want to talk with an expert who understands this stuff. He's the author of the Family Handbook and the founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery. And we're going to talk to him a little bit later about this female narcissism and queen bee syndrome. And apparently there's a lot of people that suffer from this. And I don't mean the people suffering from it. I mean the people around the people that suffer from it, what it's like dealing with someone that has narcissism. And for some people, it's the matriarch of the family that kind of holds it down, and we look at it as a position of strength, and then we find out, oh my gosh, they're actually dealing with a mental health issue. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but I read this article, and I thought, man, this is definitely something we got to talk about. Plus, I want to get some comedic observations on the news of the day. So we've got a lot to discuss and a lot that we're going to discuss tonight. I want to get your calls on all of it, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Trump now ordering all remaining files related to the assassinations of JFK, his brother Bobby, as well as Martin Luther King Jr. to be declassified. Now, his national security advisors now have 15 days to come up with a plan to release the records tied to JFK, 45 days related for the other two. The deaths of these three men have sparked widespread conspiracy theories over the years, many alleging government involvement and/or cover-ups. The order states that the King and Kennedy families deserve full transparency.
That's a big one, huh? A lot of people are waiting for this for years, for decades, and everything will be revealed.
Now, Trump released nearly 3,000 files related to JFK's assassination in his first administration, but stopped short at the time of a full release because back then several agencies requested that he not do that.
That is El Trompito, and I've got a little bit of audio on why he decided not to do it last time around. But I want to get into this because we won't know for another 45 days or so what exactly is in these files. But I want to find out what's the story, right? What is the story here? And not that long ago, we had attorney and co-author of the JFK assassination Chokeholds that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy. Matt Crumpton joined us, and I want to bring him back because I think it's important to, at least speculate on what we think may be released in these files. About a year ago, maybe more, I spoke with a different author of a different book about the death of Marilyn Monroe, and his assertions were that there was a massive cover-up with respect to that. And, of course, she was inextricably linked to JFK, RFK et al. So I wanted to really have this conversation with Matt Crumpton to figure out what's going on. Matt Crumpton, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Rich. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. So let's talk about this. Your reaction to the clip of audio we just heard with President Trump saying it was time to do it. We didn't do it last time. We fell short because Pompeo and others said it wasn't the right time. Trump feels it's the right time. What say you?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I was actually impressed that the reports that you just showed actually said what really happened, which is, there's an order that within 15 days, his DNI, which he wants to be Tulsi Gabbard, is supposed to present a report, basically a game plan of how to proceed. But the language of so it hasn't been disclosed. I've seen all these news stations today talking about how everything's disclosed now. Well, that's hold your horses. We're not quite there yet. But it is a step in the right direction. It's a step in the right direction, and we just have to see what the plan ends up being. But there's a lot. There's about 4,000 redacted documents that have been released, but they're redacted in some material way. And those are mostly CIA. And then there's another 500 or so that are IRS records that have never been released. And then there's about 11 that are deed of gift that have been donated and have not been released. So that's what you're looking at, big picture.
What do you suspect is in these records, the IRS records, the gifted records, and the others?
Sure. Well, let's start with these redacted records. You're looking at the CIA's got 3,538 of them. So it's mostly the CIA of those 4,000. And what are we talking about? Well, we know that one of the records deals with how Kennedy was looking at disassembling the CIA after he was upset after the Bay of Pigs, and it's almost completely redacted. We just know the general subject. The names of the hit team that were part of the assassination team to kill Fidel Castro. So that's a lot of people believe that sort of that killing Castro operation was turned on Kennedy. That's sort of the prevailing conspiracy. And wow, look at that! You're going to classify the people that are part of that team. That's pretty on point. There's also, Priscilla Johnson is a journalist, author. She co-wrote Marina Oswald's book, Lee and Me, or Marina and Lee, I believe it's called. And anyway, turns out she's a CIA asset, and so there's a document that says who told the CIA that she would be a good asset to work with. There's information that's blacked out about Robert Mayhew, who was the Richard Nixon set up contact between the mafia and the CIA when they first wanted to get the mafia involved to try to oust Castro. So yeah, There's a lot of stuff that's directly on point. And then the IRS records too. So yeah.
Well, hang on. We're going to continue to explore that when we come back. Folks, we're on with Matt Crumpton. He's the attorney and co-author of the JFK Assassination Chokeholds that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy. He's also the creator of the Solving JFK podcast, and he's coming right back with us. Folks, keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. And again, we are seemingly moments away from the confirmation of Pete Hegseth. It appears that Vice President J.D. Vance may be the deciding tie-breaking vote. Right now, it's down to the wire at 50-50. We will interrupt our programming to go live to the Senate floor as that news breaks. But right now, until that happens, I want to continue our conversation with Matt Crumpton. He's attorney and co-author of the JFK Assassination Chokeholds that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy. And Matt, I want you to hear this clip of audio with El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, President Trump, the 45th and 47th president, on with our friend Sean Hannity explaining why he did not classify them the last time around. Listen to this.
I did it with Kennedy to an extent, but I was asked by some of our government officials not to. And, you know, you have to respect them. I was actually asked by Mike Pompeo, who's Secretary of State, not to. And I felt he knew something that maybe, you know, when he asks you not to, you sort of say, why? And he felt that it was just not a good time to release him. And you might ask him why. Maybe he'll deny that even. But he did. He asked me. And some others also, though. They didn't want the Kennedy stuff released. And they're professionals, and I respect them. And they're working for me and the country. They're working for the country. And so I didn't release. But I'm going to release them immediately upon getting. We're going to see the information. We're looking at it right now.
Again, President Trump on the Fox News channel explaining what the delay was about and what he anticipates doing, and that's been done already. We're now waiting for that to be declassified. I want to continue our conversation with Matt Crumpton, co-author of the JFK Assassination Chokeholds that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy, and he's the host of the Solving JFK podcast as well. Matt Crumpton, before we left off, you were explaining about the Bay of Pigs and how that assault team, the hit team, the assassins for Castro, the killing Castro team, might also be the same team that they turned on Kennedy.
Yeah, that is a common theory. And it's just interesting that is one of the documents that's still redacted. So, you know, one of the other big documents is Jackie Kennedy had several interviews with the author William Manchester, and so did RFK. And those have been, I believe, classified until like 2067, but they're in the National Archives. So I don't even know if those are eligible. But, you know, the question is, wow, why are those still classified? You would think that would be like one of the main parts of history that we would rely on. She was right there next to him. I'm sure she'd have some important things to say. But the big picture on this thing, Rich, is that the documents that exist are just the ones that the Assassination Records Review Board received from the respective agencies. I mean, the CIA being the main one. And, you know, it's not like they went in and audited. They just took the agency's word for it, right?
Now, let me ask you a question. It's my own naivete and my own ignorance here, but Kennedy was shot in the United States, an American president shot in Texas, as I know it. Why was the CIA the lead agency if they're an international intelligence agency?
Yeah, I mean, technically that would be a murder, and it would, you know, be the coroner, Earl Rose, who should have been in charge. And there's a famous confrontation at Parkland Hospital regarding this exact issue, you know, that he was going to get an autopsy under Texas law. But, you know, at the end of the day, nothing like this had really ever happened. And when you say national security, a lot of times that's that, especially in the middle of the Cold War, you know?
Yeah. But why the CIA? Why not the FBI?
Oh, well, you know, in terms of the investigations itself, the FBI did. You know, the FBI was the primary investigative arm when it comes to, you know, working with the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission ended up getting a few of their own investigators, which Hoover was not very happy about. But the question is, why are there all these CIA documents?
Right.
And it's because the CIA was watching him. So they're not all about Oswald. Some of them are about, you know, some of the people that are involved in covert ops. And it's like, yeah, I understand this stuff was all super top secret, but, you know, it's more than 60 years ago. So, you know, we just need to, and here's the thing. So there are probably other documents that we're not going to get, even when they're all declassified. You know, there's a recent CIA whistleblower who came forth to former Washington Post journalist Jefferson Morley and said that he saw inside of a room in a CIA storage facility in Virginia, there are all these JFK assassination documents, including a tape of Oswald in Mexico in 1963. That's what it's labeled. It says Oswald, Mexico, 1963. So, you know, it's But look, hopefully there's no reason for these things to remain declassified or to remain classified if it was a lone gunman, obviously. So hopefully they can all be disclosed, and hopefully we can find out, look, hey, did Oswald get money from weird sources? What about, Ruth Payne? How is she getting paid? But then there's the whole thing of, it's not like it's all going to be on W-2 payroll that's traceable. So there will always be questions, but it's better to have something than to have nothing. And the documents that we already have show that Oswald was a CIA asset just by, following the routing of the files within the CIA.
Now, if I take the recent history of what we know about the January 6th riots, and that many of the people there, at least 26 of them, were FBI assets, and we know that we saw people that were actively trying to incite a riot that we can at least deduce or presume may have been FBI assets, where regular innocent people that were wearing red hats that said MAGA were not actively trying to riot or do anything bad. It seems like this may be a common go-to in our government's MO, or I'm going to dare I say the deep state's MO in doing things. Do you think that is part of the revelation and part of the impetus for President Trump saying, we're going to reveal everything, right? Because I feel like the only reason he's doing this, not because he's a history buff or because he cares about what happened in those times, not that he doesn't care, but it's really to say, we've got a pattern here, folks, and these three assassinations are all interrelated, and they have everything to do with exactly what tried to happen to me.
Yeah, it's false flags is really what we're talking about.
Right.
And, basically having a crime be committed and blaming it on another party for ulterior motives. And the first and most famous, not the first, there's many, many false flags throughout world history, but one of the most famous ones is Operation Northwoods, where they were going to shoot down a plane, a Cuban plane with Americans on it, and let Americans die, and and blame it on Cuba and say they did it as a pretext to start a war. So and this was released as actually part of the JFK records, and Kennedy shut that down, which is part of the reason why the generals hated him. They loathed him. But yeah, I think if we can get some sort of audit scenario, that'd be great. But at a bare minimum, and here's one other thing I'd like to add: there are identification aids with all these records. So a lot, without getting super deep in the weeds, I've got some of my co-authors have been spending time at the National Archives going through these final determination forms. And long story short, there are about several dozen, maybe close to 100 documents that have already been ordered to be fully redacted, and they have not actually followed through with it. So it's a question of, is it like shoddy bookkeeping or, whatever, but so we're putting them all together, and we're going to submit it to the National Archives, and file will take appropriate legal action, but hopefully the president will beat us to it.
Matt Crumpton, the long and short of it here, I realize you're careful in your word choice, and that's the attorney in you. But for somebody like me, I want to know, what is your take? You've spent a lot of time, you're working with these other co-authors on the book that you put together. What do you think ultimately is the big smoking gun here? I mean, from what I hear and from what I can see, and again, I'm just speculating, right? Where this is not news, this is me speculating. It seems to me that someone within the CIA or somebody used the CIA as a vehicle to continue to do what I think we've done, and we were warned by Eisenhower about the United States, that there is an element within the United States in the government, maybe a shadow government, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, bureaucracy, that the military-industrial complex, if you will, that enjoys being at war, building bombs, selling arms, and this conflict, for whatever reason, these manufactured conflicts. And there's a contingent of people that do not like this. Some go along with it, war hawks, which I subscribe. I'm one of them in many ways, right? There's a few wars that I'm like, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. I think we should have done a lot of them. But I also think that we shouldn't be starting them for nothing, right? For naught. Sure. So what do you ultimately think comes out of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the biggest smoking gun. I mean, there's a lot of little things once you get into the evidence. I mean, the medical evidence is a big smoking gun. But I recently just learned within the last couple of years that Oswald's internal CIA documents, the routing of those gives the game away. So the CIA is watching him because he's supposed to be in the Soviet Union, because he's in the Soviet Union, right? So they're watching him as a threat. Is he going to come back as like a KGB agent, right? But his records aren't going to the Soviet Russia division. They're going to the Office of Security, which is the office that spies on spies, and it's Jim Angleton. It's him at the top. So anyway, his documents wouldn't all go there unless he was actually an asset of the CIA. And in fact, legendary CIA counterintelligence officer Pete Bagley confirmed, in fact, that Oswald was a CIA false defector based on this document trail that's already been declassified. So there's that. I mean, what was it? To your point, they were trying to. This is what Mexico City is all about. They're trying to implicate Oswald with the Soviets and the Cubans so that they could say, hey, it wasn't Oswald alone. He was the lone shooter, but he was put up to it by the Soviets and the Cubans. And then the American people would find out. Now we have to have World War III. We would have to do like a first strike nuclear launch. And so that was sort of the idea. And then Johnson turned it from that and said, no, I don't want nuclear war. We're going with Oswald alone. And there's this whole weird exchange between Hoover and Johnson that there's a transcript for, where Hoover tells Johnson that Oswald was in Mexico City talking to the Soviets, but it wasn't Oswald. It was an imposter.
Huh.
So, but then Johnson goes on and he tells Earl Warren to get him to run the commission that Oswald was meeting with the Soviets, but he doesn't tell Earl Warren that it was a fake Oswald.
Matt Crumpton, hang on right there. I just want to take a quick pause. We're going to come back and let everybody know how they can get a copy of your book as well as listen to your podcast. Stick with me. Folks, we're coming right back with Matt Crumpton.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We are live and national. It's Friday night. It's about, 48 minutes past 9 o'clock. The vice presidential motorcade has left the White House. It's approaching Capitol Hill as Vice President J.D. Vance gets to Capitol Hill to cast that tie-breaking vote. We're going to go to the floor of the Capitol live, so stick with us, folks. But we're going to wrap up with Matt Crumpton here. He is the author of the JFK Assassination Chokeholds that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy. Matt Crumpton, let everybody know how they get a copy of the book and how they listen to your podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. You can get the book on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere you can buy books online. Also, it's on Audible, the audiobook. And the podcast is Solving JFK, and it's available Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and anywhere you can find podcasts.
Outstanding. And I want to thank you for being with us. And I will definitely be calling on you again as we get more information in the weeks to come, brother.
Man, I can't wait to get my hands on these documents. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
We're going to go straight to the Capitol to Vice President J.D. Vance.
All right. Are there any senators in the chamber who wish to vote or change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
Outstanding. There you have it. That is Vice President J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote to confirm Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. You heard it here live. I doubt you heard it anywhere else live because there's very few live programs in this time slot. So we were going to bring you the rest of that. Is there more audio coming in from that feed? That was it. So we're going to take a pause right here. We're going to come back. Your calls and more, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company live till midnight or 1 a.m., depending on where in the country you are. We're on in multiple time zones, and I'm grateful for that. And I want to, again, bring you or reiterate the breaking news that Pete Hegseth has been confirmed as Secretary of Defense by the United States Senate. The tie-breaking vote cast by Vice President J.D. Vance. Check this out.
Are there any senators in the chamber who wish to vote or change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
Well, there you have it. Again, Vice President J.D. Vance, in his capacity as President of the United States Senate, voting to cast the tie-breaking vote to confirm Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. That was the one a lot of people were worried about, that, and I guess RFK Jr. as HHS Secretary. And that's signed, sealed, and delivered. Compliments of El Trompito and the American people. So God bless America. It's a good time to be alive. I didn't doubt any of these. After hearing the report from James O'Keefe, I had a little concern that they were going to make things difficult for RFK, but not in the confirmation process in so much as in the actual administration of the department. This is what they do, right? You heard the guy yesterday saying that a sophisticated bureaucrat, in effect, can run circles around an unsophisticated political appointee. Now, I don't think RFK Jr. is a unsophisticated political appointee. I don't think he's a bureaucrat. He spent most of his life on the outside as an attorney, as a radio host, and as an activist. But that being said, I still think he's in the know. Right, he's in the know, and he's a smart guy, and he understands how this type of thing works. And if anybody understands how this works, it's Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito. He's seen it from every angle, and his team has seen it from every angle. They literally try to put him in jail for 400 years. So I think he knows a thing or three about the deep state and could teach us all a bunch of things. Anyway, folks, we're going to continue our conversation. We've got more to come straight ahead, another action-packed hour. We're going to talk about why El Trompito pulled the security clearance from Fauci and Bolton and Pompeo and some other White House aide I've never heard of named Hook. And we're going to get to the bottom of that with a former spy himself, a former lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, Department of Defense official, and so much more. So keep it locked right here for that. Plus, later, after that, we're going to talk about mental health and what the female narcissism and Queen Bee syndrome is all about. I'm really interested in hearing about that one. So keep it locked right here, folks. Again, Rich Valdez keeping you company all night long. Don't go anywhere. We're live, we're national, and we're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Happy to be here. My pleasure, and I want to invite you to join our late night national town hall conversation. We call it Open Phones Across America. Feel free to call in particular, the last couple of segments of each hour. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. I'm going to be getting to a lot of your calls this hour, so call in early. And I want to talk about some of the news. Of course, El Trompito touching ground just a couple hours ago in California and being greeted by Gavin Newsom. Now, I don't think Gavin Newsom was supposed to be there, but he was there, showed up, wanted to say, hey, welcome to the whatever state. What is their state, right? It's not the Sunshine State. That's Florida. The Golden State. And as he welcomed them to the Golden State, which as of late has been, the not so Golden State, they had a conversation. I think Trump was gracious. And then Trump made his way to speak with Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, along with the First Lady and former ambassador and DNI Rick Grenell in tow. So we have a little bit of audio on that. I'll get to it a little bit later. But that's a little bit of what's going on. Then they kept going. They continued to that was the stop after they went to North Carolina. And President Trump in Asheville, North Carolina, commenting on California Senator Adam Schiff. That is Adam Schiff for Brains, saying that he looks like he got hit with a baseball bat. I want you to listen to this one, cut number 4. Go right
I don't
ahead.
know. I was told that Schiff was going to travel with us to California. I wasn't thrilled, to be honest with you. And I saw him last night on television. It looks like he got hit with a baseball bat or something. What happened to him? Something happened to him. It looked like he got hit. It looked like he got beat around, but I'll ask Caroline to find out what happened to him. No, if he wanted to come out, I would have done that, but I don't know. Somebody said that he wanted to come on the plane, but I think he's staying back for the votes.
Of course, Schiff, I'm going to guess, stayed back for the votes so that he would not vote for Pete Hegseth. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit. Now, we've also got the president. He's crisscrossing the country. He's all over the place. John Bolton, of course, Mike Pompeo, and others who are losing their security clearance. We're going to talk about that. But I want to remind you that just a little while ago, Vice President Vance made his way from the Naval Observatory over there by the White House to Capitol Hill to cast the tie-breaking vote in his role as president of the Senate. And we've got a clip of audio on that tie-breaking vote for Secretary of Defense to confirm Pete Hegseth as the new Secretary of Defense. Check this out.
Are there any senators in the chamber who wish to vote or change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
And there you have Vice President Pence in his role as President of the Senate, voting to confirm Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. We're bringing that to you. We brought it to you live. Of course, one of the few live programs that are in this time slot. I love when we're able to participate in the live news that happens in the wee hours of the evening here. So anyway, that's part of what's going on. We've got a couple other things I want to bring up. Marco Rubio ordering a halt to almost all U.S. foreign aid, saying we've got to stop it all. I love that. Mexico has refused a deportation flight. Look, I thought they were on board. I guess it's like today they're yes, tomorrow no, that type of thing. But the Mexican government is now criticizing President Donald Trump and his unilateral immigration actions that they claim are one-sided, and saying the landing would have to require assistance from Mexico. So they've denied a U.S. military plane that was seeking access to land, at least temporarily, frustrating the Trump administration and their plans to deport immigrants, from the United States into Mexico. And this is a report according to 2 U.S. defense officials and a third person that was familiar with the situation, confirming it to NBC News. 2 Guatemala-bound Air Force C-17s carrying about 80 people each flew these deportees out of the U.S. on Thursday night. The sources said that the flight was slotted for Mexico but never took off. It wasn't clear exactly why Mexico blocked that flight, but tension between the United States and Mexico likely had something to do with it. And things are, according to NBC News, I would say they're not that bad. But NBC News says things are getting worse because Trump won the election. I would say the only reason Mexico was happy when Biden was here is because they didn't have to do anything and they could do whatever they wanted. There was no relationship. There was no dialogue. There was no conversation. They did what they wanted to do. And obviously, when you're in any type of partnership, if we share a border, we got to talk to each other. We got to make a deal. So that's that. Trump, again, threatening to slap 25% across-the-board tariffs on Mexico in retaliation for migrants crossing the border seems to have worked, but neither one of these things are in effect yet. So we might see the next executive order coming out being the tariffs that are being implemented. We'll see. Anyway, somebody from the White House saying in a text message to NBC News that the flights was an administrative issue and it was quickly rectified. So I hope that's the case. After this article that I'm looking at from NBC News, Carolyn Levitt tweeted, Mexico accepted a record 4 deportation flights in one day. So clearly the news that you're hearing across the board about Mexico saying they didn't want the flights was handled. And I'm happy to see that. They should have put that at the top of the article instead of the bottom, but that's how NBC News does it. All right, they're always out there trying to do what they do. So let's see. White House, blah, 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 blah. That's that story. I want to move on. Next up, you've got the Oath Keepers founder ordered to stay out of D.C. That stuff's not that interesting. Oh, this is interesting, but I'll get into that a little bit later. And before I go, I want to leave you with a little bit of a clip because El Trompito has been very active, right? He's been very, very active out there on issues from pro-life to this to that. And J.D. Vance has been out there as well. J.D. Vance was at the March for Life rally in D.C. today, big rally in D.C. Supporting life, saying that our government has failed us, and he's failed the government has failed an entire generation with abortion on demand. Listen to this.
But by and large, our society, our country, has not yet stepped up in the way you have. And our government certainly has failed in that important responsibility. We failed a generation not only by permitting a culture of abortion on demand, but also by neglecting to help young parents achieve the ingredients they need to live a happy and meaningful life. A culture of radical individualism took root, one where the responsibilities and joys of family life were seen as obstacles to overcome, not as personal fulfillment or personal blessings. Our society has failed to recognize the obligation that one generation has to another is a core part of living in a society to begin with. So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America.
Me too. Our birth rates have been plummeting. So kudos to J.D. Vance for that. and for sticking to his guns on that. And I want to continue the breaking news, a conversation on the breaking news that Pete Hegseth now confirmed as the Secretary of Defense by the United States Senate. This vote happening, 30 minutes ago or so at the U.S. Capitol with the tie-breaking vote by Vice President J.D. Vance. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the security clearances being, not the security clearances, but that happened too for some people. But for the people I'm talking about, it was the security details being revoked for former Secretary Pompeo, former Ambassador Bolton, and a couple of others. So I want to get the opinion of somebody who has done some spy work, former Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army, Tony Shaffer, scheduled to be with us in just a few moments. So keep it locked right here. Again, our phone number, if you want to join us on open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We're live and we're national. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to get into something that happened about, 35 minutes ago or so with Congressman J.D. Vance leaving the Naval Observatory, getting into the vice presidential motorcade, making his way to Capitol Hill to cast his first tie-breaking vote as vice president in his role as president of the Senate. And he did so. Check it out.
Are there any senators in the chamber who wish to vote or change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
And the nomination being confirmed, again, that is Pete Hegseth being confirmed as Secretary of Defense. He's been confirmed by the United States Senate. That tie-breaking vote, again, being casted by Vice President J.D. Vance. I want to get to the bottom of this and protection for Pompeo and Bolton and the rest of them. And I want to do that with our guest. Our guest is retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He is a regular on this program. We love him. President of Project Sentinel. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, welcome back.
Hey, Rich, always great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So you just heard the news. We now have a Secretary of Defense. I suspected that it would go something like this. Honestly, I'll tell you, I didn't think it was going to be this down the middle, 50-50. What do you think?
I was hoping they'd have some Democrats with common sense, like John Fetterman, wake up and change over. But no, it didn't happen. And I think this is indicative of how badly divided the D.C. I was just in this D.C. by the way. Is divided at this point. And Pete represents not only change, but a departure from normal process. That is to say, he's not a member of the defense industrial complex. He's not a CEO of a big company. He's not served in any positions such as undersecretaries or assistant secretaries. He's not tainted by doing business the old way. And I think that's what scares a lot of folks. I think that's why Mitch McConnell voted against him. I think that's the real reason that the two female senators voted against him. I don't buy into any of the allegations. I think Pete's done an adequate and effective job of explaining the differences between the reality and what has been said. So I think this is really all about the fact that he's going to go in and break some china. The people who are used to supporting the bureaucracy are not going to be happy about that.
And while that makes sense on its face, and I totally get that, but I feel like the deep state, and I don't know if you heard it, and I don't have time to play it for you, but I'll give you a recap. My buddy James O'Keefe yesterday did a report on some guy that worked in the pandemic office at the White House, or he worked for HHS, but he was the liaison with the White House. And he went on a couple of dates. It was a honey trap, one of O'Keefe's people.
I've heard about this.
Yeah. And he ultimately says, yeah, there's a deep state, of course. And, you know, sophisticated bureaucrats can run circles around unsophisticated political appointees. And that's likely true. And he said, we'll do it by, you know, whatever RFK asks for, we will likely say, okay, great. We're going to put together a commission to figure it out. And we'll just delay everything by a few years. And he was so smug in his response. And again, this guy had to be at least 10 or 20 years younger than me, and I'm 46. So I'm thinking, you know, they're starting very young. This is a real thing. And I think, is it that they just don't get the will of the people? The fact that the popular vote, everybody in America that voted, the majority of these people voted for Trump?
They don't care. They are essentially Marxists in Democrat clothing. And I faced it. Look, I came to the system, and I took an oath, and I was loyal to that oath and the American people. And I ended up becoming a whistleblower when I saw things were going bad, that we could have stopped certain things that killed, thousands of Americans. So there is a deep state. My friend, former Congressman Kurt Weldon, faces it. There's a bunch of us who have had to deal with it. I think they've gotten bolder and bolder and more pervasive. And I think they pick people out early. They start grooming them, I think is an adequate term to describe what they do.
Yeah.
And what they do is they count on people not going down deep enough to get them out. So what you just said is typical of the arrogance of the bureaucracy. It's like, we're just going to create activities and make it look like we're doing stuff and do nothing. And that's why they need people like me, people like Kurt Weldon, a number of others who I know who can come in. It's like, we know how you do things. It's time to stop it. And this is where personnel is going to be policy. Mike Walsh, Colonel Walsh, or Congressman Walsh, whatever title you want to give him, is firing everybody at the National Security Council for this very reason. It's like, we're getting rid of everybody. Even if you had a couple of good folks, I feel sorry for them. They're all going. You cannot take a chance. And I think you've got to really go with a clean sweep all the way across the board at the senior level.
Tony Shaffer, do you believe that, and in a short answer because we're about to hit a break, but do you believe that this is a God complex, or is this just smugness, arrogance, I know better than you?
Oh, I think these people are all have traits of narcissism. They do believe they're smarter than the average bear. A lot of these folks have very little operational or field experience and find a way. Like John Brennan, let's talk about John Brennan very briefly. John Brennan was about to be fired because he was a failed analyst. He ended up getting to be a briefer on Christmas to go to the White House. And next thing you know, he's the best briefer in the world. He's connective tissue. That's how a lot of these guys are. They are just bureaucrats who've mastered being bureaucrats.
Yeah, folks, we're on with Tony Shaffer, retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army, former Department of Defense, and president of Project Sentinel. Coming right back, and we're going to talk about the removal of the security details of several former bureaucrats. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back with Tony Shaffer.
It's shows like yours that are breaking through, that people are listening to, that people are trusting.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Ambassador, what's your reaction to Trump revoking your security detail, ending your Secret Service detail?
Well, I've had better days, that's for sure. This is I think typical of Trump the man. This is the kind of character or lack thereof who's now president. You know, when President Biden, recognizing the threat against me and several other current and former U.S. government officials, authorized the Secret Service to restore protection, which I had when I was National Security Advisor, I'm sure he probably wasn't the happiest man in the world because of the criticisms that I've made of him on his foreign policy. But he did it because it's simply not permissible to allow a rogue state like the terrorists in Iran to threaten Americans, whether they're in government or not, simply for expressing opinions or, in the case of the government employees, doing their job. Trump has decided to reverse it. It's obviously within his power to do it. But I think this is a matter that people should take seriously and let them contemplate who made the right decision here, President Biden or President Trump.
Why don't we let history decide who made the best decision? Right? I think it comes down to, if this person is hurt, this is going to be a bad situation for Trump, right? If nothing happens, then Trump looks like a hero and like he was right yet again. I want to get some reaction to this from El Trumpito himself, because El Trumpito weighed in on this. Listen to this.
The security detail for Anthony Fauci was terminated last night, sir. Do you have a comment?
No, I think, when you work for government, at some point your security detail comes off. And, you can't have them forever. So I think it's very standard. If it would be for somebody else, you wouldn't be asking the question. The question is very fair. But, you work for government. We took some off, other people too. But you can't have a security detail for the rest of your life because you worked for government. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Would you feel partially responsible if something were to happen to, say, Dr. Fauci or John Bolton?
No. They all made a lot of money. They can hire their own security, too. All the people you're talking about, they can go out. I can give them some good numbers of very good security people. They can hire their own security. They all made a lot of money. Fauci made a lot of money. They all did. So if they, felt that strongly, I think that certainly I would not take responsibility.
Now, one, I love the response. They all made a lot of money. They can get their own. And B, I think Trump raises a good point. These people were not president of the United States. As far as I knew, those were the only people that got lifelong Secret Service protection. But what do I know? That's why we're bringing in the president of Project Sentinel. He's a former spy, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Welcome back.
Hey, good to be here. And, Rich, to that point, I've spent time in dangerous places in alias. I'm now a public figure. My life has been threatened a few times in the past, so I have no sympathy for John Bolton. I don't. John, if you're listening, buy a gun, use it, train, be equipped, be ready. Just saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, and is what I said accurate? I think, as far as I know, I don't know anybody else who gets lifelong Secret Service protection besides Bill Clinton and former presidents.
That's it. Yeah, and Trump makes it is like, look, Anthony Fauci makes probably between $300 and $350 a year in retirement. So I think he can afford private security, just saying. And then John Bolton, John's done very well for himself. I think John could also afford it. So President Trump's correct. If these guys can't figure it out, shame on them. And Mike Pompeo also lost his security. He's not doing too badly either. I know Mike. So, they don't get it forever. And I think, again, a lot of us live dangerously. We all, have histories. Some of us are public figures. So, I just don't buy into the idea that they should have it indefinitely. So I support President Trump. I think he's correct.
Right. Now, on that front, I think that's accurate as well. And, folks, I want to remind you, we're on with Tony Shaffer. He was the national security advisor to Trump's 2020 campaign. And, Lieutenant Colonel, now, I think the fallout here and what the media is looking to kind of the gotcha moment is, if there's an active threat on Bolton and Pompeo from the Iranians, and they make good on this threat because Trump removed their security, this is a huge black eye for Trump, a horrible thing for America. But I've never seen Trump be so reckless. So my suspicion is Trump knows something we don't, that he really can't tell us. And he's like, look, you guys are going to be okay. And if you need security, go get your own. Do you think I'm onto something?
Yeah. I think, well, look, part of the deal is the United States security system of whatever you want to call the Leviathan of federal bureaucracies are going to now be focused on going after the Iranians and other bad guys. They haven't really been doing that. So, yeah, I think they're going to be a lot more proactive. I think you're going to see a lot more aggressive use of investigative tools to go after real bad guys, not people who want to worship a certain way or protest at a abortion clinic, which, as you know, has been the focus of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So, yeah. They're going to go back and start looking at bad guys instead of harassing U.S. citizens. So I think there's going to be a big change.
Now, I want to get back into this topic of Pete Hegseth getting confirmed. I think this is good news, in my opinion, for the United States. What's your take on him moving forward, and do you think they're going to continue to hinder him every step of the way, or do you think the lion's share of the hindrance is beyond us?
Well, it depends on two things. First off, as Pete has admitted himself, he's going to have to bring in some folks who can help him manage the largest bureaucracy within the United States. The Pentagon is huge. Secondly, once he's got those people in place, he's got to essentially deputize them, let them go do their work. It's going to take at least a year to get control of everything, and you're going to have to fire a lot of folks. And my old boss, Bob Harding, Colonel Harding, explained to me one time, because some of the operations I used to run are very complex, and he used to basically say, "Just don't worry about it. Just settle down. When you're juggling, just you're going to have to juggle both glass balls and rubber balls. Focus on the glass balls. Don't let those break. The rubber balls you can let bounce around a little bit." So my view is Pete's got to identify what the glass balls are, make sure those are taken care of, get those things fixed the president's going to rely on, and then start working his way down. There's going to have to be contracting reform, acquisition, research and development, all these things. They can wait. You've got to get a handle on current force structure, on current threats, and start trying to build, as my friend Don Rumsfeld said once, and not that we're going to go to war, but Don Rumsfeld said you got to go to war with the army you have, not the one you want. So we have to assess what we have and what we can do with what we have, and then start building from there. So Pete's the right guy to do that, but he's going to have to bring in the right people as deputies to help him do that, as quickly as possible.
LT, it's always good talking to you. I'm sorry that I didn't see you when you were in D.C. I was in town for a few days myself for inaugural activities.
I was just up for taping The Right Squad with Chris Plant.
Chris Plant, yes.
I'm actually back in North Carolina now. Yeah, I'm actually in North Carolina back now. So, yeah.
Oh, look at that. Nice. Well, I'm hoping to see you in person real soon, and I'm sure we will soon enough. And let everybody know how they can find you, how they can follow you, and keep up to speed with all the great work you're doing.
Yeah, ProjectSentinel.com. Just track all of our thought pieces and some of the things we're doing. And then obviously follow me on Facebook and Twitter, T-Spooky on Twitter. I generally try to keep people informed of what I'm doing there as well. So, Rich, always a pleasure being on with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, president of Project Sentinel. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Now, folks, it's your turn. Open phones across America. Your turn to weigh in on everything that's going on, no matter what. We talk about it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America, and you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. It's Open Phones Across America, a tradition started by the late Larry King that you just heard, continued by the late, great Jim Bohannon for 3 decades, and now you and me get to continue that tradition. So if you disagree, you get moved to the front of the line, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Canton, Ohio, right in the middle of the country. Debbie on WNIR. Go right ahead, Debbie. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I'm really honored to get my name in with Larry and Jim Bohannon, and now you. That makes me feel very special. Yeah. I listen all the time. I don't call a lot, but I'm really concerned about this Musk man, Elon Musk, because where was he? We weren't voting for Elon, but now he seems to be a big guy. All my friends, we're all talking about where the hell did he come from? Why is he now a big deal? So I'm scared. I'm scared that
What is
his
your fear?
money is going to make Trump do things that maybe we didn't want. Okay? I'm just saying.
Okay, well, I think that's a fair thing to discuss, and I'm happy to discuss it. What I'll say to give context or to kind of paint the picture better is I had this same concern when Mark Zuckerberg was stifling my speech on Facebook and didn't let me say anything. And the reason I say that is because he owns Facebook and he owns Instagram and he owns WhatsApp. And every time I would post something on Instagram during that 2020 campaign about the Hunter Biden laptop or anything related to vaccines, any criticism, I would get these dings on my Instagram account and they wouldn't let me. And I'll give you an example. On Facebook and on Instagram, I have, 4,000 or 5,000 followers, right? On Truth Social, I have something like 80,000 followers. On Twitter, it's something like 30-something thousand followers, right? Considerably a lot more people. So it was clear to me that in the meta world, I was being slowed down because there's more people on those. Arguably, you'd think I'd have more followers on those accounts, but I didn't. And every time I would post something that they didn't like, they would send me a notice saying this is potentially misinformation, this and that, which is something that they've now done away with. And they said, we're not doing that anymore. So I think the reason that Elon Musk is man of the hour in many ways right now is because he went and bought Twitter because of all of the censorship that was going on in social media, and it allows people to say what they want to say. That's part of it. I think the other part of it is this concern was shared, at least by me, when it was Mark Zuckerberg doing this. And he was doing this seemingly to benefit Joe Biden. And he spent $400 million on drop boxes and related campaigns through the organizations that he set up to help Biden win the 2020 election. Yet AOC and so many of the others out there were never complaining, saying Mark Zuckerberg and all of his billions are trying to take over the White House. They never said it. Nobody ever says George Soros and all of his billions are trying to take over the White House. George Soros has bought radio stations that this program is carried on. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to go through with all of it, that they knock me right off the air because I'm critical of him. And I get it. But what I will say is that Elon Musk hasn't done anything like that. Elon Musk is allowing people to say whatever they want to say. If you say, hey, I hate these people, he lets you say it. I hate those people, he lets you say it. He lets you say just about anything, right? But for like harming children, you're pretty clear to say whatever you want. That's literally free speech. So I think this is part of it. Now, what did he spend to help Trump get elected? Something like $200 million, half of what Mark Zuckerberg spent to get Biden elected in 2020. So if we compare the billionaire supporting the Republican to the billionaire supporting the Democrat, the billionaire supporting the Democrat spent twice as much, yet we didn't hear so much criticism about him because his friends in the media were covering for him. Now we hear a lot of criticism of Musk, because his enemies in the media are criticizing him instead of helping him. So I'm not saying it's not a valid concern. Of course, it's a valid concern to have, the people with the most money with all the influence. But in reality, the people with the most money typically have most of the influence. And that's just a reality of life. So I wouldn't be super scared of Elon Musk. I think ultimately it's we the people that have our say, and that's why Trump is in office. And many people, I do believe that many people did vote for Trump because of their fanaticism of Elon Musk, whether it's they love Tesla, they love what he's done with SpaceX, they like that he's a really smart guy. Heck, some of them just like the fact that he did an interview with Joe Rogan and smoked weed on the program with the guy. None of those things are an allure for me. My allure with Musk is that I think he's a very bright guy, and I think he looks at the world very differently than many of us. So it makes me curious about, I wonder what you think about this. And I'd love to interview the guy. So Elon, if you're listening, Debbie and I would love to know a lot more about you, as well as, 6 million of our fellow listeners. So those are my thoughts, Debbie. I hope that made some sense to you. Debbie left us. Okay. Well, Debbie, thank you. I appreciate that. Shout out to WNIR in Canton, Ohio. I love talking to Debbie. And we're going to come right back with the rest of your calls in Virginia and Connecticut and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. It's a tight turnaround, so we're going to go to John in Nokesville, Virginia, WMAL. John, quickly, what's on your mind?
I started thinking that probably a couple months ago that Biden would pardon just about everybody that did all those terrible criminal activity, and that they, but here's the key. I think that if they just go ahead and do the investigations, do very thorough investigations, get it all out there, and then do press conferences and fireside chats and things like that to really say, well, this is what happened, this is what happened, and show the American people, let them know how much corruption there is in the federal government so that they can see it, even though they're not going to be prosecuted and put in prison, that at least the American people see what really has been going on.
They will see. And here's what I'll say to that. I agree with you. I think correcting the record is incredibly important. Whether we put Joe Biden, this 80-some-odd-year-old man, in jail or not, I don't think that happens. I really don't. Trump was unwilling to put Hillary Clinton in jail. And Lord knows he had a chance, and he campaigned on it, right? But when push came to shove, he decided. He said, look, this is a former first lady. I don't think it's good for America. And he opted against it. But I will say, you got to put the dirty laundry out there so that people can know exactly what happened. And I think it's a good use of our time, because we don't want this to happen again. And oftentimes, if you put it out there, I think that's at least part of a good deterrent, right? So I think you're onto something there, John. Thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate you. Godspeed to you. John in Nokesville, Virginia, WMAL. Folks, we have more to come straight ahead. We've got calls from Connecticut and the West Coast and more calls coming in. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program. featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Friday night. We're live and national. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and we're going to get into a lot of stuff tonight. Looking forward to lots of good conversation. Those JFK files, if you didn't hear my conversation with Matt Crumpton, you're going to hear it. It's an excellent conversation on what we can expect to be declassified. Also had some good conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer on the big news. Of course, J.D. Vance issuing the tie-breaking vote to confirm Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. That confirmation happening about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes ago or so. We've got the audio of Senator Vance, or excuse me, forgive me, Vice President Vance making his way over to the Senate so that he can give the tiebreaker. Listen to this.
Are there any senators in the chamber who wish to vote or change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
Again, forgive me again, Vice President J.D. Vance making his way from the Naval Observatory over to Capitol Hill in the vice presidential motorcade to cast the tie-breaking vote to confirm Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. And that happened tonight. So congratulations, Pete Hegseth, and congratulations to America. Now, we talked about that as well with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer just a little while ago. And in this upcoming hour, I want to let our hair down just a little bit, as we like to do on Friday nights sometimes. I want to talk about things that matter in life, right? Because there's always things that matter in life. Having raised two daughters, I can tell you that I have much left to be desired in my parenting, in my approach to dealing with women and girls, having daughters. They always tell me I need to work on my approach. I'm too abrupt. But I can tell you, I've got friends. And when I talk to my friends, they tell me, man, you're so good. You're so thoughtful. And I think, man, if only, my kids could hear that, or my ex-girlfriend could hear that, or even my ex-wife. Right, I was always just too abrupt and too straightforward and too whatever, and you tend to offend the sensibilities of certain people, i.e., women, at least me. And I can tell you that I've learned a bit of advice from an expert, a woman, who told me, sometimes women just want to be heard. They don't need a solution. Now, as a man, I always want to provide a solution. That's really all I know how to do. If you tell me, oh, my gosh, this is broken, I'm going to try and fix it. Or I'm going to tell you how you can get it fixed. But I'm likely not going to want to sit there and hear about how broken it is when I know the solution to the problem is to fix something. And this is where communication problems abound. So the advice I was given, and this may sound so rudimentary to those of you that are, cultured, healed, sane, but it was never normal for me. It wasn't commonplace. When someone comes to you, and again, if you're a guy like me and a girl comes to you with a story, with an issue, with a complaint, with whatever, you have to ask a qualifying question. And the question is this: do you want advice or do you want to vent? Now, this is something that when I've used it, it's worked like a charm. The question is, what do we got to do to get me to use it? That is the bigger issue. And another piece of advice that's worked remarkably well for me is to, again, not give advice. So the second sentence that you use in this dialogue with your daughter, your wife, your spouse, whatever, your girlfriend, is this. When they give you all of the, blah, 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 and then I did this, blah, blah, and then they said this, and this is what's going on. I can't believe that happened. You don't say, well, why don't you, no, or what I would do, no, you say this. Well, listen, I really trust your judgment. I know you know what your options are now, and I'm sure you're going to make the right decision. Boom, you're welcome. Write that down. Record this. Go listen to the podcast. It's going to save you a world of hurt. But you have to remember how to do that. You have to assure them that you trust them, that you trust their judgment, and that you know that they know what their options are and that they're going to choose the right thing. Then at that point, when they feel super with your answer, they may in fact turn to you and say, well, what do you think I should do? And then it's open season for you. Then you could fire away and give all the advice you want. But you can't until you've earned that right. Now, look, it's taken me 46 years to learn this one. And, I don't know, a slew of failed relationships. But I learned it. And learning it doesn't mean that it's in practice, right? I still need to practice it. And I'm not an expert yet. I'm not practitioner level. But that's just me getting along with my, young adult daughters and my ex-girlfriend and the limited interaction that I have with my ex-wife. But all of that informed that. But some people have issues beyond those interpersonal relationships. Some people have issues where they're controlled or they feel like they're under the thumb of their parent. And a while back, we had a woman who wrote a book on narcissism on the show and explained that narcissism, prevalent in men, is a very difficult situation to navigate. But an even more interesting phenomena is narcissism in women, female narcissism, and how that interrelates with something called Queen Bee syndrome. So I want to give you a taste of that. I have a little bit of an audio clip that I want you to hear on this. And this manifests in the workplace. It manifests with parents. It manifests in many different places. But I want to dig in on this because I heard this and I read about it and I thought this is very interesting. Check this out.
The female narcissist often exhibits what I define as the queen bee syndrome, positioning herself as the central figure of authority, control, and admiration within her social or familial circles. She demands loyalty, obedience, and unwavering attention from those around her, often creating a hierarchy structure where she reigns at the top. In this dynamic, she expects others to cater to her needs and reinforce her sense of superiority while marginalizing or punishing anyone who threatens her dominance. The female narcissist with queen bee syndrome fosters competition and division among her quote-unquote followers, ensuring that their focus remains on pleasing her rather than forming alliances that might challenge her power. This behavior not only isolates individuals, but also creates a toxic environment where manipulation and favoritism thrive. Her relentless need to maintain control and superiority often leaves those in her orbit feeling drained, unworthy, or expendable.
So now I listen to something like that and I think, now why is this woman describing Nancy Pelosi? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's describing somebody in your life. Maybe she's describing something else. Or maybe she's got a couple of nuggets of truth in there that are kind of covered up with a bunch of attacks that are unnecessarily being hurled at this female narcissist queen bee. So I want to get to the bottom of this, and I want to bring in one of the experts. Dr. Vince Callahan is a mental health expert. He literally wrote the book on this stuff. It's called the Family Handbook, and you can get that at his website, drvincecallahan.com. He is the founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, and he's joining us right after the break. So keep it locked right here. We're going to dig into this and see, is this the description of Nancy Pelosi? Is this a description of somebody in your family? I don't know. It might be your boss at work. We're going to learn more about it straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
my hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And right before the break, I played a clip for you of someone speaking about a female narcissist. And, you know, I made a joke about it sounding like Nancy Pelosi and how she ran the Congress as speaker. But I think some people that might have sounded familiar with someone in their family. And this is something that I encounter a lot when I talk to people that, you know, they say, oh, you know, I'm not going to this family function because of whatever. I'm not, oh, they're narcissistic. And I think today, because of the advent of TikTok, the advent of Instagram and Reels and YouTube Shorts and all of that, everybody's become an armchair psychologist. And I don't know that all of this stuff is accurate or true, and that's why I like to bring in the experts, because this stuff it's unfair, one, to hurl these things at people, but there's probably a degree of narcissistic behavior that's actually true and real and actually occurring. So I want to get to the bottom of it and find out what's the story between these female narcissist queen bees. Is it real or is it fake, phony, and fraud? And I want to do that with our guest, Dr. Vince Callahan. He is the founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, and you can find out more about him at drvincecallahan.com. Dr. Vince, welcome back, sir.
Hey, man, thank you for having me back on your show. I love your show, and I was listening to what you were saying, and you were giving great advice, especially to men there at the beginning of that when you were talking about the two parts of the brain about rescuing versus just listening to them vent. So kudos to you on that one.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And yeah, that's just, you know, getting smacked in the face enough times in life by reality and practicality. And you go, oh, geez, I'm hoping by the time I'm like 60, I'll actually have mastered this gentleness. But I want to talk about this because I find, you know, I got divorced in my early 30s. And I've been single most of this time. I've had a couple of girlfriends for a little while. I'm not really good at that. But when you meet women and you're dating, I meet a lot of women. And this is a recurring theme I meet when I meet many women. They tell me about this troubled, you know, oftentimes we hear about daddy issues, but I feel like it's an unspoken truth about mommy issues. And I don't know if I'm onto something or not. But in this clip that I played before, they discussed how, you know, the female narcissist is this person that's, you know, just like the male narcissist, but I guess masquerading as the matriarch of a family or a group or an organization. In the clip that you heard prior to the break, is this something that you'd say is accurate, or is this somebody with sour grapes getting on TikTok and just maligning women in their family?
No, I would say it's accurate. Queen bee has actually been around since the 70s, that term referring to how women act in certain types of relationships. So, no, I think that lady was very accurate what she was saying. And your assessment of Nancy Pelosi is right on. I would agree with you 100%. That she fits the model for it. Not to be disparaging to her, but no, she definitely fits queen bee syndrome.
Yeah, it seems that way to me. Well, I heard another clip, and this clip is pretty interesting because it's not just queen bee in the sense of Pelosi trying to whip votes and keep control of the House, but it's of a mom and a daughter, or a mom and a son. And it's a reenactment, right? It's one of these TikTok reels that you can see on Instagram or other places, even Facebook. And it's, you know, like a dramatization. But I think there's some reality to it. And I think there's probably a little bit of propaganda to it as well. But I want you to hear it and help me dissect it. Listen to this.
I'm a narcissistic parent. So I think your role is to make me feel good about myself. But I'm your kid. I know. And because my life is pretty chaotic and out of control, I use you to have some sense of control. Jeez. You'll notice that my own needs come before yours. I'm really obsessed with public perception. You know, I want everyone to think that I'm the perfect mom. That's why I'm one way in public and another way at home.
Yeah, I'm already learning that the most important thing isn't how I feel. It's what other people think about me.
Well, actually, the most important thing is what I think of you. And that depends on how you behave. See, my love is transactional. If you meet my needs, then I praise you. And if you don't do what I want you to do, then I'm critical of you, or I give you the silent treatment. This is really confusing, I know, but it's how I get some sense of control in my life.
Well, how will this impact me?
Well, you'll be terrified of making mistakes, disappointing people, or letting others down. That's because I conditioned you to never let me down. Because I emotionally abandon you when you're not doing what I want you to do, you'll be terrified of abandonment in your adult relationships. Always feeling like you're not good enough and always wondering what people are really thinking of you. You'll be an overachiever, always trying to please me, but it will never be good enough because I feel empty inside myself. So nothing you can do will actually ever please me.
Now, Dr. Vince Callahan, when I hear that, some of it sounds like it could be a reality, but some of it also sounds like, am I supposed to, if my kid does something that is not, in my opinion, ideal, am I supposed to just, not give them the silent treatment and get upset? I mean, I think people get upset and they go, oh man, I'll talk to you later, right? How much of that is, or am I looking at it the wrong way or being overly generous? We've got a couple of minutes and then we'll come back from the break, but what do you think?
I think that little interchange is right on. When I deal with folks from a counseling standpoint, I either get them from those type of parents, the moms especially, where that love is transactional and there's really an attachment issue, or I get what the other side of the coin, which is borderline, the borderline personality disorders where there's such a fear of abandonment and serious depression and can be extreme violence in a snap of a finger. So this too is kind of both sides of the coin, where you've really got insecurity from the mom, and that's the whole covering of narcissism anyway, is the whole insecurity piece and who they really are and this inflated self and all that kind of stuff. And when you're in this situation, this stuff is real. It's very real in the world. I deal with it every day with folks.
Well, Dr. Vince, I want to dig into that a little bit. So if you'll be gracious enough to stick around for a few minutes, I'd really appreciate it. Because I know that there's a number of listeners that either A, have questions directly for you, and you're welcome to call 833-482-5337 and ask Dr. Vince. But I also think that in my just travels in life, I've met people that have felt that way. And I know that I knew that when my parents were mad at me, I never felt like they didn't love me and they wanted to leave. I just knew that, man, they were pissed off. And I can't imagine what life would be like for somebody that thinks that, oh, man, I think there's a difference between saying, oh, my gosh, my parents are going to kill me, or, oh, my God, they're going to disown me. And that's got to be a terrible feeling for anybody, whether you're 65, 70 years old and your parents are passed away, or if you're a young person that your parents are still around. I don't think anybody should feel that way. And my gut tells me their parents didn't want to send that message, even if that's the message they sent. I could be wrong. So I want to come right back and get your take on all of that stuff. Folks, we're going to continue this discussion with Dr. Vince Callahan and with you all, the American people. 833-482-5337 is the number. Of course, it's open phones across America, so you're free to call in on any topic. But right now, I want to get your thoughts on this stuff. Is this Queen Bee narcissism stuff the real deal? Have you dealt with it? Do you know about it? Love to know your thoughts. Again, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're coming right back with Dr. Vince Callahan, founder of the Florida Institute for Neural Discovery, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The female narcissist often exhibits what I define as the queen bee syndrome, positioning herself as the central figure of authority, control, and admiration within her social or familial circles.
This is interesting. I want you to get a load of this because, again, I'm not just going to talk about female politicians on Capitol Hill here that think that they're the queen bee or female narcissist or whatever and what have you. I want to talk about, and again, not singling out AOC all out crazy or Nancy Pelosi or anybody like that. But I know that this is something that rings true for a lot of people about someone in their family. And that's why we're going to talk with Dr. Vince Callahan and wrap this section up. And then straight ahead, we're going to get into some political talk of the day with Chonda Pierce. She's a comedian, and she's scheduled to join us just in a few minutes. But Dr. Vince Callahan, we've been talking about this female narcissism and the reality of how it is, in particular between a parent and a child. And we had to take the break. I want you to pick up where we left off.
So the beginning of narcissism is an unreasonable high sense of self-importance, and they require constant or excessive admiration. Now, you think of a parent who has the ultimate authority. They're shaping the life of a child, and if they are a narcissist person at the core, now they're going to use that parental power to make sure that they are basically, you bow down to them, you admire them in everything that they do. They are the, constant center of attention. You see them in the teenage years where if you've got a teenage girl especially, the narcissist mom will dress like the teenage girl to be accepted, like the 14-year-old's being accepted. And if you point that out, there's all hell to pay. And this whole thing about pulling back love and the silent treatment, that's very real. Me personally, I went through this with my father. My father was the kind of guy that if you said something wrong or made him mad, he wouldn't talk to you for a week. So I understand that dynamic in the family.
Is that, would you say that is narcissistic, or he was the strong silent type, or are we making euphemisms for people that respond that way?
No, he was narcissistic because he had to be the center of attention of everything. It always was about how good he was and what he did and how much he did for the family and all those kinds of things. And it's very much a narcissistic point of view with this inflated sense of look at me, I'm so important, and without me you have nothing and you could do nothing. And that's a very real thing. I've spent the last 39 years helping people unpack their childhoods from situations just like this.
So, Dr. Vince, when somebody that's listening to this right now and says, man, I didn't know. I just thought, my dad was a tough guy or my mom was really difficult to get along with, but you're describing someone in my family. What do you recommend they do? From what I understand from a previous interview with somebody who wrote a book on narcissism, they explained that there's not a ton you can do because it's difficult for the narcissist to heal or be repaired or change their ways.
It's almost impossible for the narcissist to get healed or change their ways. And unfortunately, when you point out how you feel about what's going on in the relationship, they'll cut your legs off as well. So for most people, I tell them, let's unpack the childhood wounds and get you healed. But basically, you've got to get out of the relationship if you identify that this is that. And you can set boundaries. On narcissists, those don't really work because, like I say, they'll come at you with everything they have because they can't lose that sense of importance. That's their whole, everything about their life is feeling important, and that overinflated ego, which really hides insecurity. And they're not going to let you see that insecurity ever and or to deal with it. So boundaries, yes. Get out of the relationship, yes, even if it's family, kind of pull back a little bit because the other side of that coin is being under such pressure that it affects you and gives you depression and anxiety and ruins your life, and that's not okay.
So it sounds to me like the advice is the boundary is really within yourself, right? A boundary of how far you're going to take this relationship.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Outstanding. Dr. Vince, I want to thank you for being here and shedding some light on this stuff. I tried to make it as humorous as I could, but it's a pretty serious thing. And I, like I said, I've met many of people that have gone through this. And interesting to hear your perspective on it as well. Let everybody know how they can get a free copy of your family handbook and where they find you.
They find me on drvincecallahan.com, and the handbook is a free download. It doesn't cost you anything. We don't take your email information. We don't sell it. We don't do anything like that whatsoever. You can download it, and it's a great discussion book for your family and to deal with things inside your family. It gives you great tools and tips. So I recommend. We've had thousands already downloaded, which is great. And part of that is in part because of your show and being on your show. And so we appreciate that. And but yeah, they can find me, drvincecallahan.com. I do counseling and I do all kinds of speaking and retreats and those kind of things. And so whatever we can do to help people, the answer is always yes.
Outstanding. Dr. Vince Callahan, I want to thank you. Folks, check out the website, Dr. abbreviated Dr. Vince Callahan with a C, and that's .com, drvincecallahan.com. Sir, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate you. Godspeed.
Thank you so much.
You bet. And amigos, we're coming right back straight ahead with Chonda Pierce. She's a comedian, and she's got some hot takes on the news of the day. We're going to learn more about her work as well. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My son is a millennial snowflake. I don't know how that happened. How did that boy grow in my womb? How did this happen? I prayed over him. I sang over him even before he ever came into this world. And now here I've given him everything. Every car he ever wanted. He's never had to work a day in his life. He gets everything handed to him on a silk. Oh, maybe that's why he's a Bernie Sanders fan.
That's comedian Chonda Pierce. She's the author of the book Life is Funny Until It's Not, a comic story of love, loss, and lunacy. We're going to learn about that. And I love this particular skit talking about the snowflake and how people create them, right, by giving our kids everything. And we love to talk about family dynamics here. Chonda Pierce, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rich. It's so good to talk to you. Man, and listening to the narcissist thing, I was feeling a little sick to my stomach. My whole life is about me.
yeah, I was thinking, I work in radio. Somebody call security.
I know. It's so hard because, where does that fine line stop when you are, my name's on the ticket, my name's on the bus, my name's on the T-shirt, and yet you go home and your teenager rolls their eyes and goes, everything's about you. And I go, well, yeah, actually it is.
Well, it's funny. I had those same feelings. And when I interviewed a different doctor who wrote the book on this, it's called The Narcissist Handbook, I said, am I a narcissist and not know it? And she said, only if you're looking to blow things up at the end and destroy every relationship you encounter. And I thought, well, I don't know, get along with everybody.
Wow.
But it's that retaliation piece that is the telltale sign of the narcissist. So I think we're in the clear as long as we're not doing that.
Yeah, I hope so. Even though, now I wrote about this in my book. I bear all and tell all because I don't want the National Enquirer to do it after I'm gone. Right. I just, yeah, exactly. And, I'm a church girl. I grew up a preacher's kid. I got into comedy, which was like, I'm going to hell already, And so I decided to be completely honest. And if I'm completely honest, it is interesting that in the life of a comic or any public figure, there is that fine line of what makes it about you and then what makes you about parenting. I think I juggled it well until I had an adult child that just walked away from my life. And because I guess she thought maybe I was narcissistic or unhealthy. I don't know what it is. Now, God is good and miracles happen and she's, back in my life. And so that's really, really wonderful. But the detail of it, you when your kids, people used to ask me, do your kids mind being material? And I'm like, well, no, they want to eat. They want to eat. So this is what the family, this is the family business. And it is a fine line. And politicians, oh my gosh, I think they're taking a great amount of narcissism to walk into the Oval Office. People complain about Trump all the time.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that was my question again. Her name is Dr. Tracy Kemble, the woman who wrote the book. And her response was,
awesome.
It's okay to be narcissistic as long as you're not a full-blown narcissist, because without that, and she said, we wouldn't have good athletes, we wouldn't have good performers. You need that in order to be successful. It's when you're trying to destroy others in the process that it becomes an illness.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Now, and I had a pastor dad that was very much like that. Narcissism is tough, especially when they tell you God's in the mix. What God told him to do this, and I want to go, well, the greatest narcissist in the world must be God, because it really is all about him, and we need to make it all about him. So where's that fine line? The great thing is God never destroys lives.
Right. I think that's the saving grace. Now, I want everybody to know about your book, and before we run out of time. So
and that I'm supposed to be funny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're very funny, and you're a pleasure to talk to. Tell everybody what, I guess, the central premise or the big takeaway when they get a copy of the book. What's the big takeaway?
Well, one, that I have had some hilarious moments in life, like most comedians. The saving grace of my life, one, is my relationship with Jesus Christ. Amen. But more so in how do you keep being funny in a world where comedy is usually quite trashy? And how do you do that and navigate, through a world as a conservative and as a Christian? I got beat up badly the first time around when I stood up for Trump. Second time around, I've not been as vocal or as active, but somebody sticks a mic in my face. I go, I'm voting for Trump again. He'll change things. He's going to change the world. Right. And I'm very proud of that decision. So life is funny until it's not. And so the moments that are not are the times in my life where I've also had to deal with tragedy. I lost both my siblings, my sisters growing up. My pastor father was terrible. I lost my husband. I am,
sorry.
I've survived everything from rape to to Democrats. So there you go.
I can't believe I just laughed at that. That's a gift that you have there. Let me remind everybody, folks, we're on with Chonda Pierce. She's a comedian, and she's really funny, if you haven't figured that out already. And she's got a national tour that's starting in February, and I want her to tell us all about it. Chonda, tell us how people can learn more about the national tour, how to learn about how to get tickets, and how to get a copy of the book.
No, thank you very much, Rich. I'm a big fan of yours, so I listen all the time. But, you can go to Amazon and get the book. You can come out and see me. My schedule's on Facebook and everywhere else. And Chonda Pierce, Chonda.org is I'm an entire
and that's
organization.
CHONDA, Chonda, CHONDA.org.
Yes. The other way you spell it is Hebrew, and it means shameful. So I don't want to deal with that.
Well, that's beautiful. Chonda,
we're terrible.
We're out of time on this segment. I could do this all day. You could be my new co-host here. But everybody go check out Chonda.org, CHONDA.org. The book is Life is Funny Until It's Not, a comic story of love, loss, and lunacy. And Chonda, I'm hopeful that when you're not on tour, you're willing to come back during late night and talk with us again, because I think there's a lot of stories in your book that the audience would like to hear about, and I'd love to hear about them as well.
I would love it, Rich. And God bless you. You take care of yourself.
Thank you. God bless you, too. And I appreciate your visiting us tonight. Folks, we're coming right back with your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You just do such a great job, and you make it sound so easy.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with you, the American people. Let's go to Charles, Daytona Beach, Florida, WNDB. Charles, quickly, go right ahead.
Hey, how's it going, Rich?
Thank God.
Hey, how was your meeting with President Trump the other day?
Well, I didn't get to see President. I got to see him, but I didn't get to meet him. But the inauguration and all the associated festivities, they were fantastic. I saw some people I hadn't seen in a long time. I hung out with Dan Bongino for a little bit. Big shout out to Dan and his wonderful wife, Paula. I saw Devin Nunes, former Congressman Nunes, CEO of Truth Social. Saw him. Congressman Byron Donalds, another great patriot. Secretary Burgum, Secretary Duffy, Vivek Ramaswamy, just a lot of great patriots that were out there, and it was really a good time. What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, he's got an all-star lineup. It's just who can keep up with Donald Trump anyway? Can anybody? I was watching Real America's Voice today. He was like,
yeah.
He's here, he's there. He's done more in like the first 100 hours as President Joe Biden did. I mean, for America, put America first. It's incredible.
Right. Well, I think you're right. Listen, I think he does have an all-star lineup there, and he's rocking it out. I mean, he's been at it a couple of states, three different states today, knocking things out of the park. I appreciate his energy. I appreciate his commitment, and that's what we need to do. I think people need to take notes, I guess. Charles in Daytona Beach, thanks for the call, brother. Shout out to everybody listening in Florida. WNDB in the building. Let's see. Let us continue. I want to go to Steve, Anniston, Alabama, streaming on WDBT. Steve, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanting to comment a little further about the lady who mentioned Elon Musk.
Yes.
And I believe it was Ronald Reagan who said that one of the biggest threats to democracy is unelected officials who has the ability to fund presidential campaigns for a president that they believe will fight to push that individual's agenda, regardless of any concern towards the American people. And I feel like, maybe that might be something that Elon Musk might be doing. Because,
yeah, listen, I agree with what you're saying. I think unelected bureaucrats, the problem is, I don't think Musk is really a bureaucrat. He doesn't really command any part. He's part of a committee that he's going to point out how government is too big and where it's spending money it shouldn't spend. He's not able to really make rules. He's just allowed to break things. So if it were different, I think we could be scared. But the idea of the Department of Government Efficiency is to kind of shred government and make it smaller. Now, I'd say if you want to be afraid of Elon Musk, elect him to president where he has power, where he can write an executive order, or elect him to Congress. Then you could say, we're afraid of what he might be able to do. But right now, I think he's pretty much powerless other than saying, at least as far as government goes, other than saying what is on his mind and what he thinks we should get rid of. Steve, great point, and thanks for the Reagan reference. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody in Alabama and streaming on WDBT. And I want to shout out everybody listening on WLS, KSAR, Ron, Joe, and Hugh, as well as Joe, everybody that's on hold. Sorry I couldn't get to you now. Hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.